Good evening. It's 5:26 p.m. Saturday, March 27th, 2021. First time I've done a podcast since the Cheez-It Bowl against Oklahoma State. This one, unfortunately, I have to do on a sad note. As most of you know by now, early this morning we lost the Godfather of Canes football and the man that put Hurricanes football on the map. That would be Howard Schnellenberger at the age of 87. To understand what Howard Schnellenberger meant, you have to understand where they were prior to his arrival. In the 70s, Frank Kersey was the coach. 1970 took over. He was there just a couple years at the closure of 72. Pete Elliott took over. He became the AD in 75. And that was a very important time because when he became the athletics director, he was the athletic director in 1978 before he left for the NFL. This was Pete Elliott now. And you talk about the athletic director at the time. Carl Summer took over later. He was 2-8, 75, and 3-8 in 76. And Summer was fired. And the reason being losing blue chip recruits to other schools and very poor attendance, which I'll get to in a moment. Lou Saban would take over in 76. We only won 3 in 77. But you will look back then and you started to see Lou Saban put together a very good recruiting class that included Jim Kelly. Okay. And in the second season there in 78, there was a guy named Otis Anderson. I'm sure you know who he is now. He only became the first Hurricane back to rush for 1,000 yards in the season, and from 3 straight seasons from 77 through 79. Now, after just 2 seasons, Saban resigned because there was a controversy. He threw a Jewish man into the on-campus Lake Osceola and left for Army after 78. Now, there was a lot of coaching turmoil at the time. There was a lot of problems financially. They had to make a tough decision whether to drop football at that time or go down to 1AA. You have to realize a couple things here. There was a very key guy, Dr. John Green, who was the university executive vice president at the time. He was able to convince the BOT to give 1A another shot. And that was a very important hire he made when he hired Howard in 79, despite not having any head coaching experience. His credentials were elite. I mean, you coach. He learned under the Bear, and then he was Bears OC at Alabama. He won 3 national championships, 61, 64, 65, and he was the OC for the Dolphins under Don Shula. Now, when Howard came in, he told his staff and his players he was going to win a national title within 5 years. And remember, we were in trouble at the time. We were on the verge of dropping football altogether at this point. But he had a plan, a 5-year plan. And it was 2 key parts of that. A pro-style offense and recruiting. What I mean by that is he got the best local talent in Miami-Dade and in South Florida. That's Palm Beach, Broward as well. He changed everything in recruiting nationally and in the state of Florida. He called it the state of Miami. You know, and of course you all know what that is if you watch the documentary The U with Billy Corbin, which I highly recommend, by the way. He was able to cherry pick the rest of the country, a few choice recruits, but absolutely kept focused on South Florida. Fenced it all off. He did it all the way on the East Coast up to Daytona Beach, and across the I-4 all the way to Tampa and into Pinellas County. So anything south of like from Daytona on the East Coast south, and then from like Pinellas south on the West Coast, and in that whole area, that was the state of Miami right there. He hired Earl Morrow as a volunteer QB coach. And we were an independent at the time. So he was going to make that program national. Now, we were 5-6 the first year, but we would knock off Penn State in 79. The goal was in 80 to get a bowl game. That's what happened. We went to the Peach Bowl. We would beat Virginia Tech 20-10 in that game. In 81, a team nobody talks about enough, and they should. They went 9-2. We defeat Penn State late October in the OB. They were number 1 at the time. In the final game, we would beat Notre Dame for the first time since 1960, 37-15. The following in 82, Kelly gets hurt. We would go 7-4. But when you enter 83, it was going to be Kelly at left. We had to find a replacement for Kelly. We eventually chose Bernie over Vinny at the time. We were unranked. We lost 28-3 in Gainesville, though Bernie had 25 completions. But then win the next 10, shut out Notre Dame, and played Nebraska, who was number 1 at the time in the Orange Bowl. And of course, you know what happened there. The dynasty started that night, and everything had to fall right, and it did, because Texas was the only undefeated team at the time, and they were number 2. They lost in the Cotton Bowl. Illinois, who was 4th at the time, lost in the Rose Bowl. So it was there to win our first title. And of course, you all know the deal, the Calhoun tip, and that was it. We would leapfrog Auburn at 3, and Auburn, he made good on his goal to win a title. But to understand the impact of this man, he had such an impact in South Florida. It's like, this was the man that made everything else possible. When he left, Jimmy Johnson took over, and you know what the deal was there. He kept Howard's 5-2 package in 84. But then look at the success since after Howard left. Jimmy would win a title in 88. Excuse me, in 87, of course, the Orange Bowl in 88 against Oklahoma. Dennis would win 2 titles, 89 and again in 91. Then we went through the down years of Butch, and then Coker, and etc., 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 etc. But to understand the impact of Howard, you have to understand where we were at that time, where we could have lost everything. I wouldn't be a Miami Hurricane fan if it weren't for Howard Schnellenberger. Okay? I wouldn't be that. Realize the impact he leaves behind. Okay? Realize the man he left, the impact he leaves here. Okay? Understand that. It is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, in fact, I'd like to play a few quotes, if I may, from Tim Reynolds. Tim Reynolds tweets this morning, and there were a couple good tweets from Reynolds this morning about when they paid tribute to Howard Schnellenberger. In fact, one that stands out, a couple that stand out to me, besides his widow, was Art Keogh, who said, and I quote, back in 2013, "My junior year, we voted 6-5 to keep football. We were going to drop football, and he took it from there to a national title. The guy's an unbelievable coach. Heck, we couldn't pay the phone bill, and now we've got 5 national titles and played for 11 of them. And he's the main fabric of all that. He started it all." Tells you something right there when Art tells you that. From a former FAU defensive back, Marcus Bartles, in 2011, quote, when people are going to talk about him, you remember that coach Howard Schnellenberger? He brought Miami up. He started all these programs. I'm going to be like, I played for that guy. I played for that legend. That tells you the impact he had on his players. Now, Howard himself said on why he would think FAU would be a power. "We used to call it the state of Miami. Now we call it Florida Atlantic Territory. And you ought to be able to recruit very good players here. And if you can, what would keep you from being great? It just makes no sense." But this Reynolds tweet says it all brilliantly. The impact of the University of Miami football, plain and simple. He started the whole thing. 1983 doesn't happen without Howard Schnellenberger. The 1990s don't happen without 83. And 2001 doesn't happen without the 90s. Simply put, he said it all, and that tweet said it perfectly. He started the whole thing. Period. And finally, a statement from his widow, Beverly Schellenberger. Quote, "Howard always treated me special like a queen and was truly a husband that every Canadian girl dreams of. You will always be my love now and forever. I'm proud to be your wife. You were a great leader of men and the leader of our lives." That last part of that statement says everything about Howard Schnellenberger and the impact he had on his players, on South Florida, and on the city of Miami. Period. Simply put, folks, without Howard Schnellenberger, there's no Miami football. There's no swag. There's no green tree. Hell, there's no Orange Bowl. Period. There's no Orange Bowl. Howard Schnellenberger built the foundation to what you see now. Howard, coach, you will be missed. To his family and his players, may God bless you. And my condolences are with you today. We will certainly and deeply miss Howard Schnellenberger. May God rest his soul. Go Canes.